Hello, my beautifuls. My name is Amy. I've made it abundantly clear in every capacity that I am a trans girl. That is nothing new. But I think it's finally time for me to talk about my journey. I'm not on any kind of hormone therapy yet, so this is essentially a part one of two. I'll have to make a second video when I have transitioned. Okay, I don't actually have a good YouTube avatar, so just know I have all of these options to choose from. I'm just picking this one on the left, okay? So let's start with some background, unrelated to the trans stuff. Even as a young child, my family was very accepting. If I had known who I was, my family wouldn't have questioned me when I told them. All of my hobbies were things that I decided to walk into. And, you know, as an autistic child who also had severe anxiety and psychotic symptoms, things were pretty rough regardless of how people treated me. People loved me, and yet I felt like people hated me. Anytime I stepped into an unfamiliar situation, I had a huge fear of being judged. I even got embarrassed when watching a new TV show if the theme song was unusual. I don't really have an explanation for those things. I never experienced anything truly traumatic in my early life. But my emotions and my body always reacted as if something terrible had happened. As a kid, I just assumed that these feelings came from whatever had just happened to me, and so I blamed it on petty things in the moment, like, I don't know, saw a crab or something, I don't know. I had hobbies. I love video games and art and music and cartoons, and I always have. I didn't have a miserable life. I was just a miserable person. I did have some small hints that I was trans at that young age, but I never discussed them with my parents because I was afraid of everything all the time. One time I dreamt that I was a girl and kept trying to have that dream. I kept being envious of girls' bikes. I always seemed to notice, despite not having any knowledge of hormones, that girls felt different, experienced life differently to boys, and like many other trans people, moments in cartoons where a character's gender swaps always stuck out to me as a very interesting thing. I secretly loved the show My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, but I refused to ever watch it intentionally because I was so deep-rooted in my irrational fear of being judged. One time, I had a very age-inappropriate fantasy where I break my penis, pretend it's an accident, and then tell the doctors to make it the other part instead. That wouldn't have worked. Fast forward to the summer of 17. I started to have a better comprehension of the world around me and how it worked. I learned how to start educating myself on certain things. I was still a misguided teenager though. I still had no idea what HRT was, so when I had a desire to be a girl, I believed that the only way to feel like a girl was to somehow change my DNA, and so I was excited for some kind of technology to do that. For some reason, I had the idea in my head that the body parts themselves are what changed the feeling, and it hadn't clicked to me that there were different hormones at play. And one thing about that still holds true to this day. Most of my dysphoria is biochemical. Testosterone feels wrong to me. More on that later in the video, though. On a side note, though, unlike most people assigned male at birth, my puberty started early and was extremely gradual. Funnily enough, I started puberty at the same time you'd expect a girl to start. It's been so gradual that I think I might not even be finished growing yet, despite being nearly 21 years old. I digress. At this time, for the first time in my life, I was interacting with people online to a much larger extent than before. I went on forums, got banned from places, and even made a Discord when my friend Colin told me about it. I met people that I still know to this day, important friends who I would never leave. Without Discord, I never would have learned social skills or had the freedom to make mistakes and learn from them. At that point in my life, I had a vague idea of what being trans was, a stereotypical one, and one warped by media and my own repressed feelings, but an idea nonetheless. 2017 for me was a year of excitement and positivity. It was the year it started to really click with the teachers in school, and it was the year I started developing my game Slice Night. It's also the year of the Nintendo Switch coming out, and my mind was full of things that had nothing to do with my gender. But when it came up, when I spoke the words, "I'm not a girl," some small part of me felt confused, and I didn't notice until after. I did have one strange thing I remember saying to my friend Colin, though. I said, "Do you think if we were girls we would still be straight?" And he couldn't even figure out how to respond. He knew something was up with me. Fast forward to 2018. I was hanging out with my friends, and they were in that phase where everyone said gay as a joke. I was acting quite queer myself. One time, I saw this comic of Amy Rose flirting with somebody, and I, for some reason I don't remember, liked it so much that I roleplayed as her and flirted with a male friend of mine. That experience, sleep-deprived, doing some weird, reckless thing socially, but since I roleplayed that, for the first time in my life, I was a girl. I had no idea why I didn't stop, because I didn't even realize it felt great. But as I believed I was still a boy, I considered this behavior quite odd. Why was I feeling like this? The sense that what I did that night was desirable in some way? I felt like I wouldn't want to say no to a boy if he asked me to date him, but I'd say I'd feel weird saying yes. I started to come to the realization that maybe I might not be straight, and I had this weird misinterpretation that I was turning bisexual. I had a freak out. I thought to myself, I don't want to be that, and please help me not become this before it's too late. Lies. I was lying to myself, and I didn't even know it. Everyone else knew it though, especially Amity. We'll get to her later. In desperation, I turned to another friend of mine. For the sake of privacy, I'll refer to him as Lycanroc. Lycanroc saw my plea and grounded me for a moment. He slowed me down and talked to me about how it might be a good thing to consider accepting it because I might like it. And so, May 18th, 2018, all night, we talked. And he flirted with me too. It was quite sexual, but don't worry, he was within my age range. I felt incredible. I felt this form of happiness that I had never witnessed in myself. So flustered, so joyful, so loving and cuddly, and so extremely full of excitement that I got aroused. For lack of professional language, I love being a cute little bitch. I went downstairs in the morning, and even my mother noticed how happy I was, and I had no idea how to explain why. A week or so passes, I had accepted my sexuality. I liked boys and I liked girls. I didn't know what a non-binary person was yet at that point. I started to act more feminine in response to this because of my association of those traits with being gay. I started to really act girly, to the point where I thought it was abnormal, to the point where my friends noticed. I loved it. It was giving me the same feelings that I was getting with the roleplay. I experimented with things like wearing a bow tie in my hair, wearing headbands, secretly tried to wear my mother's bras, tried to fashion skirts out of shirts. Side note, I started to date somebody at that point. He's my ex, and he is also trans. He wasn't out at the time. I am so sorry for the amount of girly compliments I gave you. But he told me that what being pansexual was, and I learned from him in that way. Big respect goes out to Midnight Man. I hope you transitioned happily. I said to my friend Amity, and I quote, "If I'm honest, I get a bit of a rush when someone calls me a girl." The egg had begun cracking, and at that moment, Amity knew I was trans. But I didn't even know. From there, it was a fairly slow and gradual process of numerous egg moments. It was rough though. I still had internalized that I was somehow wrong for wanting to be a girl, and I kept saying things like, "That was weird, I'm so sorry, what's wrong with me?" Another side note, for about a week I dated Amity. We learned from each other from that, and it also helped me normalize certain girly things. And so, I got through that. And I kept questioning myself long after that. It was a very gradual acceptance. In August of 2018, I was feeling nostalgic. I remembered someone I knew in elementary school. Someone who loved me. Trisha Lee was forced to move away from her problematic father, but before that, she gave me a heart-shaped locket. We had a strong bond with each other. So, on a whim, I decided to see if I could contact her, even though 7 years had passed at that point. I found her on Facebook Messenger, and I awkwardly reintroduced myself, displaying very clearly that I was weary and afraid. It turns out she was thinking about me too, coincidentally, and she remembered who I was, and she was happy to see me. We had conversations nearly every day for a short time, and then I realized I love her. We had grown and changed in such similar ways, personality-wise. We both loved TV and stories and drawing and games. I confessed to her that I have a crush on her, and she told me she felt the exact same way. To this day, we talk, we confess, we flirt, we learn from each other, we love each other, unconditionally. We want to spend our lives together. Eventually, I was starting to feel as though the girl thing was more than a thing, it was an obsession. Amity noticed that I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I kept trying to deny it. I asked my mother what I would have been named if I had been born a girl, and she said Chutney. Yes, like the wine, but spelled like Shantae. My mother has a history of misspelling names. I mean, hell, my dead name is Damien. Yes, that's how it's spelled. Credit where credit is due, though. Storm is one of the coolest middle names ever, and I'm keeping it. I started to go by Chutney to my friends, and started to gradually request people to call me a girl. I even told my mother that I'm trans, but I was so quiet about it that she forgot until I brought it up a few more times. It became clear to me that Chutney wasn't a name I liked all that much, especially since people started shortening it to Shat. One person I looked up to was Tiffany. She embodied everything I wanted to act like as a girl, and I even considered stealing her name at the time. I searched for a while for names because I wanted to find one that represented me. But what I ended up going with is Amy, because I saw a meme that was like a dad walking in saying, "Are you winning, son?" And the trans daughter said, "I'm not your son anymore." And the dad responded with, "I'm sorry. I love you, Amy." So there I was. My name is Amy. I was a trans girl. And from that point on, it was a matter of coming out. And so I did. I came out to everyone, gradually. My sisters especially accepted me immediately. My sister Skylin made sure of it. Mom got me a flowy dress for Christmas, and I loved it. I still have it. The pandemic hit. I spent so much time online, so much time inside my own head, and so much time talking to people. My grades were good enough that I got away with missing an entire school year and passing. I spent all of my time being myself. I wrote to my doctor informing him of all my feelings, making it abundantly clear I want to be a girl. it became clear to me that one of my life goals was to be a girl, and I knew that for sure. I did constant research about what it feels like to be a woman, how the body and mind change on HRT, and I loved hearing about it to no end. I couldn't shut up about it to my friends. I still can't. Side note, I predicted this virus was going to cause a problem. My global studies teacher didn't believe me when I came back. He apologized because I was right. I told Miss Noonan I want to be called Amy. She immediately informed all of my teachers, and I was Amy at school, and I felt like myself there. About a month later, I realized she didn't know it was a gender thing, so I told her, and then people started calling me by she, her. High school was still pretty rough for me though. I was mature, but my doctor had me on some contradicting medications, and that really fucked with my ability to function properly at school. As of writing this, I haven't taken my medication in about 2 years. It's been hard, but it's better than feeling like your blood is made of coffee 100% of the time. So, I graduate high school. I was overweight. I had muscular atrophy in my arms, and I was so easily stressed that I am virtually unemployable. After that, it's been a road to self-improvement. I started to go for walks as often as I can. I increased the amount of work I did around the house. I had depressive breakdowns from how difficult it was to take care of even part of my home. But I've kept at it. I kept exercising, drawing pictures, playing games, being myself mentally, and over time, I became healthy. I've had some really bad motivation issues. It took me over a year to make my latest game, Zoe's Journey, whereas before I had finished them within at most 7 months. I put in a subplot about her being trans too. From August 24th, 2022 to December 1st, 2022, I had no internet access whatsoever. Some shenanigans with the internet company combined with my family and my inability to make money to help support the family. And, well, with no internet, I had no contact with friends, no contact with my significant other, and it took an extremely long time, and it took a toll on me. And I feel it somewhat, and I still feel it somewhat. There was a lot of drama in December, even though I got it back then. In January, my friend Falcon introduced me to this musical artist named Yonkagore. I promise you this is important. I really liked some of the music this artist made. It was emo, it was catchy, and it was meaningful. I started listening to the more depressing songs, and I started to really like them. From January up until May of this year, my life was pretty much exactly as you'd expect. I finished my game finally, I started becoming really physically fit, I was downloading YouTube videos on public Wi-Fi using my new phone, transferring those files to my PC to watch. I was really getting into the Yonkagore music. I kept listening so much. But then the season change hit. The summer happened. I started to feel off. I started to get really sad and angry and confused and clumsy and sick and overly empathetic and really unstable emotionally. I told people about it and they said it was depression, and I had never experienced depression in quite this way before. It felt honest. It didn't feel like I was having a reaction. It was a true pain, and I had convinced myself that I should avoid the depressing music because I assumed that would prevent the feelings from growing. That was repressing it, and that's not something I ended up doing on purpose. I don't know exactly when I realized, but I started to feel as though if I were on HRT, I wouldn't be feeling this way. How would I know that? I was directed to a webpage explaining biochemical dysphoria. I thought that webpage would help me feel better. Instead, I read the page, and I find every mental problem I have ever experienced is on that one page. That completely shattered any kind of denial I had left, which it turns out was a lot more than I thought. I was depressed because I was dysphoric. The music was just helping me confront these dark feelings. My brain is wired to expect estrogen. My body, being this physically healthy, is producing more testosterone than ever, and this was more than a gender thing, more than an appearance thing. I need to transition. Looking back, so much of my stress was caused by testosterone, and I started to realize I have never actually been okay. It's always just been a feeling to me when I felt okay. Let me tell you, that realization saved my life, but unfortunately, it was the worst time to have that realization. The chemicals in my body were creating so much stress, I was having actual hallucinations. I saw more bugs than there actually were. One night I got really dizzy and sad and I had to lay down, and on that night I felt as if my wrists had been cut open several times over the years. They were sore and pulsating. But there were no scars on my wrists. This was a stress-induced hallucination. I kept feeling increasingly unstable. I turned to drawing more and more and getting obsessed with it because it distracted me from the fact that we haven't been able to afford support yet. I became extremely skilled at drawing, somewhat skilled at composing, pretty good at singing. These coping mechanisms are wonderful, by the way. Please use them, it benefits you. Unfortunately, no matter how much I pushed forward, I felt like we weren't getting any closer to the welfare setup. And without that, I'd never be able to afford the therapy I'd need to get permission to go on estrogen. Something in me snapped on August 10th. On August 10th, with no irony, no exaggeration, felt so hopeless and empty and sad, I wanted to die. I started following the steps for how to kill myself. I prepared the world for a life without me. I didn't say goodbye to friends and family. I convinced myself that they'd forget. I played with them, loving them, appreciated everything. I hinted, not told, but hinted at everyone that I'd be moving on to something bigger and that some things won't matter anymore. I said I was going to give away Slice Night because I felt it should continue even without me. And then I came up with a plan. I had it in my head that I was going to get in the shower and that it would be the moment I'd decide if I was going to kill myself or not. It would be easy in there, and my friend Strawby noticed my intentional Freudian slips, such as, "We'll jump across that bridge when we get to it," and when I said, "Decide where I want to be tomorrow," they asked from what options, and I said, "Up or down." I vaguely told them what was going on, not entirely, but they knew what I was doing. They've done it before. They anonymously sent me a notification on Reddit for suicide prevention. I didn't know it was them. They kept telling me to talk to them. I said, "It's my first time, it's probably better alone," and they insisted that it isn't. So I talked to them. I told them how I think the reason I felt this way was because my life refused to change with me, and how I wasn't the only person who had a say in where my life is being directed. They told me I shouldn't be the only person to choose its ending either. Strawby calmed me down. I decided not to kill myself. When Iron heard about it, I informed her that I'm not going to do it. It took me a while to recover from that mentally, at least 3 days. even when what was about to happen next was quite great. I felt really weird. I wasn't used to existing anymore, but good things started happening. Really good things. I gained a small circle of popularity from my art. I started meeting new friends, and eventually, my love for Trisha Lee and for everyone and for myself reignited my spark. I started drawing again. I find out that Yonkagore finally noticed one of my countless fan arts, and I was fangirling out. I was flabbergasted. Then the day after that, I find out that Yon's girlfriend, Mellow Range, is in fact a fan of my art and has been showing them everything from the start. I was absolutely floored. Not only were they not creeped out by the amount of fan art, but this semi-famous couple was actually enjoying it. I couldn't believe it. A few days later, I told Mom everything about the dysphoria, about the pain, about the obsession, the instability, about the suicidal day. And she understood. She doubled down on trying to help. She finally is remembering my name. Ever since then, she's been exceptionally supportive, and I have hope that I'm finally going to be able to move forward with my life. She wants me to go to therapy. She wants me to transition, and I feel so loved. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Trisha Lee. Thank you, Mom. And that pretty much brings us to tonight. Me recording this. My sisters are about to go to school in about a week and a half. We soon will have the time to figure out this welfare thing. We soon will have less financial troubles. I realized a few days ago my dress is too big for me now. I'm regular woman-sized. Soon we will get our high-speed home Wi-Fi back. Soon I will go to therapy, and that will get me the opportunity to get hormone replacement therapy. To be put more poetically, soon I will have it, finally. The magic potion that will turn me into a girl. It's a bumpy road ahead. It's not going to be easy at first, but I'll finally be able to fix myself once the storm is over. A wise person once said,
"You are loved, you are wanted, and good luck. The coldest night of the coldest year comes right before the spring."
Goodbye. Good night. I love you.